Hey, everybody from the Sandberg fam. I'm here with someone that I know pretty well, and I've had the chance to work with them a little bit. And this gentleman's name is Mr. David Bradburn. And the cool thing about this guy is that he has a lot of cool and different experiences in the world of creativity and film. And I'm excited because I'm hoping you can see his pathway and all the different unique jobs he's had. And from that, maybe inspire you with an interest or a passion, and also learning some skill sets that David will talk about that can benefit you, and not just necessarily in the film industry, but in a lot of different areas too. And I think there's going to be a lot of overlaps with other people we've interviewed too. There's just these common skills that seem to benefit people. So David, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And if you don't mind, if you could give us just a little background story, kind of what your profession currently, and then kind of maybe walk through a little bit of the history of where David's been in the world of film and the world of even education in that, because I think you have a really cool story to tell.
Cool. So like the other 26 million people in the country, I'm unemployed currently, thanks to COVID-19. So that really means that what I do right now is I freelance. I look for individual projects. But let me back that all the way up to high school. So I did this thing when I was a senior where I applied to one school. And I got in, and I qualified for some scholarships, and I decided I didn't want to go there.
Okay.
Yeah, so not the best plan. So I applied to another school, a school that much harder to get in, and that was much later in the application process. And they were way different back when I was in school, but it was still, if you apply early, you have a better chance of getting that. I didn't get into that school. So now here I am at, second semester senior. This one school that will take me, I don't want to go to. So I ended up at a community college, which was fine. My dad worked there. I grew up in the school, so I knew it really well. I went there for a year, then I transferred to a four-year university. And because I'd been going to this community college and taking a ton of classes, I was able to graduate early from college. So I graduated a semester early and promptly started taking classes again at the community college, because right now you guys can keep that health insurance till you're 26. When I was in school, the day you graduated, whenever that month ended, you were done with your parents' insurance. In just a couple of weeks, nailed out all the hours I needed for the semester. All that time I was applying for work. Finally found a job like April. So I graduated December, started working in April at a homeless shelter. So I was working on the near west side of Chicago. On the north end of Greektown, I worked in a homeless shelter. I did intake coordination. So I interviewed people to come. It was an 18-month program. So guys, single men, could come in and apply and stay with us up to 18 months. And then after that 18 months, they could transition into another SRO, which stands for single room occupancy. It's like a hotel or dorm style living, and they could stay there indefinitely. Most of the people we worked with were drug addicted, mentally ill, or both. And those are the three main things that cause you to end up being homeless. So here I was, 22, working with, I think our average age was 40, 50. Sure. And there were a couple people that were closer to my age, but I'm trying to tell these guys how to put their lives back together. And I didn't know my ears from my elbows for the most part, because all I had was a college degree, which, that's not a lot of life experience.
Right.
So I did that for 3.5 years. And the last year I was there, I had started grad school because I decided I didn't want to keep doing this. I knew I wanted to get a master's, but I didn't want to do it in social work. But one of the things I had to do while I was there, in addition to intake coordinator, I was a case manager. So I helped get the guys outside resources, but I also led educational groups, everything from looking for work to how to communicate, just sort of like life skill type stuff.
Now, if I can jump in, was your degree related to this job, or was this something that you
in education with a minor in political science? So kind of, no.
Yeah, sure. You're helping and educating, but it's interesting where that twisted into. So I was just curious.
And at this point, when I graduate, I'm like, the one thing I know I don't want to do is teach.
Okay.
So, but I really enjoyed I really enjoyed the education classes that I taught. They were like 4 to 6 week, once a week classes. And I had always enjoyed reading and writing. English was not my best subject in school, but I enjoyed sort of the creative end of it. So I decided to go to grad school and get my master's in education and do my certification in English. So I had to go back and take all these English classes because I wasn't an English major as an undergrad, and take all these education classes so I could get my degree. And then graduated in December and spent a semester subbing because trying to find a teaching job in the middle of the year is tough.
Yeah.
And then that fall I started teaching full time. And then I taught for high school in Chicago for 20 years.
Wait a minute. So you didn't want to go into education and then you ended up in edu.
for 2 decades. So that whole time, and going back to even high school, my parents had bought a video camera. We're talking like VHS. I'm dating myself here a little bit. I took that thing everywhere. When I had to go get my allergy shots, we took it to the hospital. We went to McDonald's, we took it to the drive-thru. I mean, that was with me everywhere. Nobody ever said, why don't you think about going into film school? I didn't know it existed. I didn't know there was something you could go study. To me, Hollywood literally was on the other side of the world. And I like, how do you get in there? I had like no idea, so little idea. It didn't even cross my mind until, so I'll get to that point. I spent a lot of time making movies as kids. So we just like Friday night, we'd go out and be like, hey, let's make a movie about this. And we'd make a movie, ended Friday night, came around and we had a short little movie. In grad school, I had to do a research project. We ended up doing a video for that, a little documentary. And that's what kind of got me back in. Because when I went to college and stuff, the group of people I was making stuff with, we all kind of went to the wind. So I just kind of like had always kind of kept it on the side. And the second school, the last 17 years I was at one school. And that school, when I first got there, had a film festival. And I got really involved with helping produce that and just kind of started teaching myself how to edit and just as much as I could. In 2011, I had finished editing a documentary that I shot in 2005. That is terrible. But I was done editing it and I wanted to send it to festivals. I swallowed hook, line, and sinker the "if you build it, they will come" idea. And so I went to a friend of mine and said, hey, I want to start an LLC just to kind of be a firewall between me and any sort of legal problems if this film blows up or when it blows up. And I didn't have any releases signed. I shot in a third world country. In the event that someone is like, hey, you don't have my permission to show this. And so he says, well, what else do you want to do with film? And that was the first time, literally the first time, it was 2011, I had thought, I want to do a lot more with this. So that was when I started my production company, which is called Fork the Man Productions. And I sent that documentary out to, gosh, I don't know, 50, 60 festivals, and was universally rejected across the board. And I spent about $3,000 doing those submissions. And that was 2011. 2012, I'd been working on a script with a friend of mine, and we shot that film in 2012, finished it in 2013, sent that out to probably as many festivals, and was entirely rejected.
Okay.
And then I made another movie the following year. And that one finally got into a couple of festivals. I think I had 120-ish rejections before I actually got an acceptance and was screened at a festival. And I just counted up my festivals the other day. It's somewhere like 80 festivals, every continent but Africa and Antarctica.
Well,
and
not many festivals in Antarctica this time of year.
There's got to be one. I mean, when they're down there, it's 6 months of winter. Well, not anymore, but it was.
Yeah.
That was 2011 through 2018 when I stopped teaching. I had been freelancing. I did press stuff for the show Empire. I've done a bunch of corporate stuff, few commercials and things for Kenmore, all as a freelancer. And then in 2018, I was offered a job as a full-time director and producer at a production company, where I was until COVID-19 blindsided the entire industry. So that's the quick and dirty of how I got here.
Well, that's interesting. I like hearing this. You got started and just because it was a passion and you enjoyed it, and then you got pretty serious and sent it to festivals and got rejected. What made you keep doing that? Because I think a lot of people fear, like, when you put something out there the first time, your very first thing is never going to probably be as good as 13 down the line, right? I mean, as you do, you get better. So what was that made you not say, oh, man, this is not going well, I'm just going to do something else? Why'd you keep doing it?
It's interesting because I think the harder thing is actually for it to be accepted. And then you sit there and you're in the room with people watching it who don't know you, or they do know you. And you're like, but I think also part of it was like, I think I can solve this problem. I think I can figure out what it is that's not working. And some of it was just, I didn't know people. Like nobody knew me. I had zero connections. And it took a long time to kind of build that momentum and that social capital to then, I became more known, not that I'm really that known, but more known than not known at all.
Right.
And that kind of just drove me. And it was really, it's the process of making the film that really hooked me. I like the writing. I like the kind of figuring out how to make it, which is also, that's maddening too. And I like directing. And then on the back end of it, it's stuff like this. Like, I can come and talk about what I do and why I do it, and the stories that are important to me, because the films have sort of paved the way for that. So just, I caught the bug. That's how we talk about it. It's like, oh, you got the bug. And next thing you know, your bank account is zero.
You're all in.
Right.
Okay. Well, if you were doing this, now you mentioned film school. Is that something you ever pursued, or with this hobby and passion you kind of learned as you went?
So I've been accepted twice into DePaul's master's program, and I have not gone twice.
Okay.
And what I decided was, when I looked at what it was going to cost me, and mind you, I'd already paid for an undergrad and paid for a master's. And personally, I'm at the point where I will happily get another degree if someone wants me to have it bad enough to pay for it. So I looked at what it was going to cost me to go to DePaul and the 2 years of my life, and I'd have to quit working. And it was like, there was some obstacles. I figured I can take that same amount of money and make movies and learn just as much and have something at the end of it. And one of the benefits of being an educator was I could look at what my finished product was, and I could show it to people that I trusted and listen to what they had to say and figure out what was working and what wasn't. And then the next project, design a curriculum. The next script was going to address the issues where I was weak. And so I could then tool that and get better at that. And then the next time focus on something else. So I was able to take that background in education and put it into how I approached my filmmaking, and basically put myself through my own film curriculum.
Yeah, interesting.
One of the things I ended up teaching was film production. I taught that for 10 years as well. So it was all kind of forcing me in one direction.
Yeah, that's unique how that ended up overlapping for you. That's great, though. That you could learn from each other too, and so students knew certain things maybe that you didn't, and you could share with them. That's a really cool kind of synergy that happens sometimes in education. With your job, your last previous job, I think a lot of people don't really have an idea of what does that look like. Is that behind a camera? Is that behind a computer? Is that with other people? Is that a solitary job? Could you kind of walk through a day of what your job was like?
So there's a couple of different days. There's the office day, and take the train downtown, sit at your desk, sit on the computer, have meetings with your coworkers or sometimes with clients. Some of those are video meetings, some of them are phone calls. That feels like a 9 to 5. You're just largely at your desk on your computer working, setting up shoots, overseeing edits, just prepping for booking flights, prepping for whatever's coming next.
Okay.
Then you have sort of your travel shoot day, where you might wake up at, say, 2:00 in the morning, get on a flight at 4 a.m., fly to, we'll call it Rhode Island, hop in a cab to go to wherever the client is, and film for a couple hours, and jump back in the cab, go back to the airport, fly back home, and get in bed at 1, 2 in the morning, whatever. So long day, short work hours. Sometimes those shoots are 2 or 3 hours long, but your commute is brutal. Mm-hmm. And then, sometimes you have a week of that where you'll leave home on Sunday and then you get back home Wednesday at 1 in the morning, Thursday work or not, Friday get up and maybe work from home. So but there's like, what is the routine is there's no routine.
Okay.
Because I would say probably 80% of the shoots I did on that job were not in Chicago. But when we last fall, we shot some commercials, and we were shooting 5 days in Chicago and prepping for a month before that, and the edit was a month after that. So it was just a lot of office work or a lot of field work.
Okay.
So it's really like it's hard to say that like this is what a day looks like. It looks
Sure.
like a lot of different things, and that variety was nice. So some of the travel would be it could get brutal. Like mm-hmm. January, I think I was home 1 night a week, and it wasn't. We would always cheer when we'd have 2 nights in the same hotel. Like that was a good trip. Go ahead.
So if you go to Rhode Island and you're there and at the shoot, what did your job look like?
Right. So I was a producer and a director. So that would put me so you're like, let's say we're doing a patient story. This is our client has designed some medical device, and this device is now living in the patient's body. The procedure was a success. This device makes their life a whole lot better. I would be the one interviewing the person with the device. Excuse me. I would, when they're not looking at the camera answering the questions, they're looking at me, and I'd be asking questions. They're going to edit everything I say out, but I'm the one asking the questions, trying to get their best answer. And I'm the one dealing with the client and interfacing with them. And I would travel with a camera person who would be doing all the camera work. So camera person and I would work together to kind of set up what it's going to look like. And then we'd shoot what we call B-roll, which is all the stuff that you see when they cut away to during the interview. So say there's a news segment about Sandburg High School. You see the news reporter talking, and you cut to all the kids walking in and out of the building without showing their faces and all that kind of fun stuff. That's B-roll.
So if I'm getting this right, in a big picture, you're the person who's talking to the client, knows the big picture and idea, and you're taking that to Rhode Island with your cameraman and crew and saying, all right, we got to make sure we get all the right shots today, mm-hmm. so that when we bring it back, we can chop it up and edit it so that, we get exactly what our client wanted.
Right. And then during that edit, there'd be an editor who'd be assigned to the project, and I would still be the one dealing with the client and answering all their questions, sending the edits to them and getting their notes, and working with the editor to get them fixed to the client specification.
So that's a very unique situation, I bet, sometimes, because a client has an idea and then a crew has an idea, and you're in between communicating and trying to make mm-hmm. everybody happy. So I think that kind of segues then into, obviously, I think communication would be a huge part of your job. What are some skills you find that really benefit in the world of film in that? Because it sounds like you're dealing with a whole bunch of different people when you're producing and directing.
Right. So, and we've been talking about more the corporate end of it, and those are, it's more like a video factory where we're sending out small crews, very lean, flying, packing everything down as tight as we can so we can get it on a plane. We show up and people are like, "That's all you brought?" And I'm like, yeah. So that's one type of communication. But really, as a producer, one of the ways I think about it is like the fulcrum of to borrow science, of the teeter-totter, right? And you've got the crew on one side and the client on the other side, and you're where everything pivots on. And
Okay.
So it's constantly it's being able to clearly articulate what you want, and part of that is knowing what you want, but also being able to listen, being able to hear the client. And they can't always, they're not film people, they don't always express it in terms that are really clear and make sense. And so you have to listen to figure out, oh, this is what they're really saying, and parrot that back to them, like, is this kind of what you mean? Or find an example, like, is this what you're talking about? So that you can communicate really well with the client. It's, in a lot of ways, when you do this enough, it's easier to communicate with the crew because you all kind of speak the same language. You're on the same page. You work, your teammates. With the client, they're the outside influence that is sort of the variable, and ultimately the one that has to be happy.
Yeah, that's a lot to juggle for sure. I can only imagine. And I imagine, like you said, with experience more and more, that becomes more and more natural. And when a client isn't pleased, that's probably a unique situation in your setting because, what was interpreted and then what the client really wanted can be a confusing thing. Are there any skills that you found that work with that when a client isn't particularly happy with the way things are going?
In the business world, you could lose a contract, you could lose a client, and that could be, tens of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million on
right.
it. If you upset somebody, and that, bosses don't like that.
Right. No one likes losing money.
Nope. So again, it's listening, it's patience, it's being able to problem solve, being able to, like, if this isn't working, how can we fix it? Can we fix it? Knowing when to escalate it, and communicating when things are going fine. There's not much to say, but if there's a problem coming,
Sure.
Getting your team wrapped around that problem, or if there's a tight deadline or a very picky client, you talk to the editors and you say, hey, this is what we're dealing with. This is what so there's a plan in place, and so everything gets done so the client's happy in the time the client needs to be happy, because missing a deadline is also a problematic thing.
Understood. So being a film producer and director, besides the communication and that, it seems like a pretty creative job, though, because you never quite know what's going to be happening in that. So for the person interested in potential travel and for not the same routine, this might be a cool draw in a creative way that can be successful. Besides that, because I want to respect your time too in that, when you're on a shoot and working in this industry, maybe this type of area of film to a student is like, oh, this seems like a lot of dealing with people. What are some other areas or jobs in this film area that you find that can be something that someone can create a life with?
I mean, so we've really, like I said, just focused so far on sort of the corporate end of things. There's the whole narrative television, film, theatrical end of it that we've not touched on. There's a lot more jobs in that sector, and not just a number of jobs. I mean, any major TV show, you're probably looking at a crew of 150 people making each episode. It's a big crew. Pretty much any job you can think of, there's a film job for that. If you like accounting, there's accountants, right? If you like teaching, there's on-set teachers for the kids. There's laws that dictate how much time they have to be with a tutor, and how much time they can be in front of the camera. So
for childhood actors, in that,
for childhood actors, yeah,
okay.
Their education's mandatory. If you like to paint, you can become a painter on a set. If you like to act, obviously you can be in front of the camera. If you like to play with sound, there are sounds of probably more important than the actual visuals in a movie. If you see something go wrong visually, you can get past that. But if the sound messes up, you know that right away. And it's hard. It takes you more out of the experience. If you like lights and cameras, there's that. But if you like business, there's a whole business. Producing is really about business. Directing is more about being creative. If you're more artsy, and there's clearly those jobs as well. So pretty much, if you like food, if you like to cook, whole catering, craft services, we don't let people on a film set, they don't go home for lunch. So
that's interesting. I never thought about it. There's a lot of different opportunities and unique jobs that all fall into that title of film and TV and that. But yeah, if you're business minded, but still like that creative side, you can still be a part of that. So that was a really great point I never even thought of. Is there anything that you would say to high school students, that might be advice or something you wish you would have done, or just anything you'd like to say that when they're looking in the world for different careers and that, because it is a confusing thing to kind of figure out what exactly you want to do. Do you have any suggestions or advice for that?
Yeah. Well, one, you don't need to know today. And you have to pick what's happening next, and that, if you don't make that choice, life's going to make that choice for you. But if I really didn't decide I wanted to go into doing this until I was 40.
Okay.
And, maybe it would have been better. Maybe I'd be further along if I'd started when I was 20, but I didn't. And so I've essentially had 3 careers. So I think that's one thing. And if you're interested, we hear all about, there's not a lot of money to be made, or there's so much money to be made, it's ungodly. It's in between there. You can make a decent living. The reality is at 22 when you graduate college, most people aren't making anything anyways.
Right.
So we're all going to start at the bottom and work our way up, unless we, got a lucky hand dealt to us. But if you're interested in pursuing film school is not the only option. There's the good thing about film school is you get to play with some really fancy equipment, and you meet a cohort of people. You learn some things, but you don't have to go that route. Most of the people I know in film didn't go to film school. And when your jobs usually aren't like, let me see your resume, let me see your diploma. It's, can you do it? Are you good to work with? Can you show up on time? It's really that basic.
So networking is a big part of this field.
Networking is everything. I hear the phrase gets thrown around a lot. Your network is your net worth. And that's really true. I can point to people, and literally I have friends who I can say, because of them, I've made this much money.
Wow.
And more than one person. Most of the jobs I've got through people, not because, I sent my resume in. And if you're really interested in pursuing film, reach out, connect. I'm easy to find. So shoot me an email. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Well, I want to kind of recap on everything and wrap this up for you, my friend. But yes, thank you. I'd be happy to be that bridge to get in touch with you if they do have any questions. But I just want to say thank you so much for your time and being transparent about your journey and your 3 different careers and where you are today. I heard a lot from networking and important to know people. One of the things I love that you mentioned that maybe you didn't realize you were highlighting was the idea to not be afraid to get into it and try it. And even though you get rejected in that, you're doing it because you enjoy the learning process and the challenge. And you have to remember, I think a lot of us hesitate. If you read and listen to entrepreneur podcasts, a lot of people don't ever take that first step for fear of rejection, but you got to start somewhere. So you always have to have your first thing you build or create. So don't hesitate. Start when you're passionate and go for it, and it'll only get better from there. And I think you made that perfectly clear, that experience is such an important teacher, and a great teacher at that. Students, I hope you got a lot out of this. This is so great to think about different areas, different careers, but also just different skills and how they overlap from anything from science to film to accounting, to catering and culinary. We kind of talked about it all, but really there's a lot of basic skills in there in this world that help us. Networking, communication, hard work, getting in there and improving and learning and experiencing is all about it. So thank you so much, David. I'm going to hit that unrecord button, and then I'm going to just catch up with you because it's always good to see you. Sure. Thank you so much.